Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post another quick video here. This is going to be the next video in the Ask Mr. Hall of Fame series, where I simply answer questions from my subscribers and viewers about anything that you may like to know. That's anything from what's your favorite song by this band to big complex things and everything in between, collecting habits, just kind of whatever you would be curious about. Been doing a few of these videos now, have a great time doing them, so I definitely want to kind of continue it, and I'm loving the questions. And by the way, any questions that you do have, please do not leave them on this video. Go to the video link down below, and I'm trying to have everyone leave all the questions there. That way I can go to that one video, keep track of everything, mark off what I've answered, because throughout the course of this series, I want to make sure I answer every single question that's asked, and I will get around to every single question. So, but yeah, other than that, let's just kind of jump right into it. Typically do about 4 or 5 questions, keep it around 15, 16 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. And the first one is from Lovell Andrew. I'm sure you guys here know him in the VC pretty well. I always refer to him as LA. It's kind of the nickname I've given him. I hope you don't hate it or anything, because I call you that all the time. But his question was simply, what are some of your personal favorite Japanese pressings that you own? Which is kind of a question I would expect from him, because he's anyone who knows his channel knows that, number one, he's a serious collector, a great taste in music, and when it comes to just amazing original pressings, Japanese pressings, audiophile stuff, like he has an amazing collection in that regard, especially on the jazz side of things. Just awesome stuff. But yeah, so what I did was I just kind of went through my Japanese collection, because I keep my Japanese and Mrhoffame separate from the rest of my collection. And I just kind of went with the first 10 or so things that popped up that were some of the albums that I just were really excited about getting, and that are kind of just some of the ones make me the happiest in my Japanese collection. So we'll start off here with Vanilla Fudge. Fantastic album. Definitely love the Japanese pressing of this. I mean, I have the Mrhoffame and a US pressing and everything else, but almost every time I go to spin it, I go right to the Japanese pressing. So that's one I certainly love to have. One that kind of has a lot of meaning to me too is Sammy Hagar, VOA. This is one of the early rock albums, like maybe the second or third cassette I ever bought out of the store, and it's just has a ton of meaning to me, because it was just one of the first albums that really got me involved in rock music. And so to have an original pressing, a Japanese pressing, that is awesome. I searched for a near mint copy of this for quite some time, so I was really pumped to get my hands on that, which is Van Halen OU812. I love the Sammy years of Van Halen. This is just a fantastic album. And so in working towards completing my Van Halen Japanese collection, this was one that I was very pumped to get. So I still need a Japanese pressing of Women and Children First and Diver Down. Those are the two that I'm still missing. Another great album in my Japanese collection is Billy Joel's Greatest Hits, Volume 1 and 2. Just a great album, period. And, getting a little more difficult to find now, just, with any pressing, US pressings or whatever else. But to find a Japanese pressing in that perfect condition, I mean, the vinyl and the cover near mint, across the board, fantastic piece. Absolutely love it. If you don't have a lot of Billy Joel in your collection, that's kind of one nice simple one that has hits from his early years all the way up into kind of in the late 80s and all of that. A recent acquisition, which definitely has become one of my instant favorites in my Japanese collection, which is Kiss Destroyer. This is my favorite album by one of my favorite female artists, so of course that's going to hold a nice special spot for me, which is Stevie Nicks. Absolutely beautiful. And I don't have a ton of metal in my Japanese collection, so a lot of the pieces I pick up there are just automatically kind of special to me. So Ozzy Osbourne, Ultimate Sin. Same thing I kind of say about Rat on the glam side. I have their first 3 studio albums, and I could pretty much pick any of those to be some of my favorites. So my Rat collection inside my Japanese collection is awesome. This is one that I've wanted for a long time. I've kind of told the story when I got this just a few weeks ago. You know, I'd done 4 or 5 bids on eBay over the years trying to win one of these and just never had an opportunity. So John Coltrane's A Love Supreme is definitely one of my favorites in my Japanese collection. Greatest jazz album of all time, in my opinion. Another album that goes right with what I said about Sammy Hagar a moment ago, Twisted Sister Stay Hungry, was really the first album that brought me and had me, you know, really listening to hard rock and, you know, kind of what glam metal and blah blah blah. But yeah, so this album just has tremendous meaning to me, and definitely special to have it on Japanese pressing. All Zeppelin stuff on Japanese pressings are awesome, but yeah, I'm just gonna kind of go with Led Zeppelin 2 is definitely one of my favorites. Probably because it has one of my favorite obies, quite frankly. But beautiful pressing of that. And I don't care what anybody says, this is one of my absolute jams right here, which is Billy Ocean's Suddenly. Just one of my favorite albums from the, I guess you can kind of say the 80s R&B side, even though he was a nice crossover. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows the big hits off of this, like, you know, Loverboy and Caribbean Queen. Those were gigantic hits. But really, it's the B-sides on this album that are just like the absolute jams, with stuff like Mystery Lady and Syncopation. And I mean, Billy just tears it up on this album. So yes, I love the Japanese pressing. I have a very nice US pressing of it. I have the alternative cover that a lot of people don't know this came with. So yeah, just fantastic album. And last but not least, had to show a little Magic Sam's Blues Band. This is Black Magic. Just an amazing, awesome blues album and artist, period. If you're into the blues and don't happen to know about Magic Sam, you must check him out. Favorite song off of this is What Have I Done Wrong? Just fantastic tune. So those are some of my favorite Japanese pressings, just kind of the ones that may not be the most valuable ones in my collection, in my Japanese collection and all of that. But I just kind of thought like those are the ones that still kind of give me the, you know, when I go and pull them out and listen to them and all of that. So yeah, thanks for the question, LA. I appreciate it, man. Let's see. Next, we're going to go to Miss Lady Soul. And she says, hey, Brandon, here's a question. Which album or albums would you like to see a reissue of in 2022? Definitely a good question. And I mean, 2021 has been pretty good for reissue. So I'm assuming maybe we're going to see some big stuff in 2022 as well. But as far as reissues, so again, I'm intentionally thinking stuff that has already been pressed on vinyl. So I'm not picking anything here that's never been pressed on vinyl. There might be one, but I even think it was pressed. But anyway, so stuff I'd like to see reissued in 2022 that would make me really happy. Number 1, Seal. Fantastic album right there. One of my favorites albums by him. 4 is a close second, but yeah, just a fantastic album. This has been pressed on vinyl before. I think original pressings like in Brazil, and there were I think one overseas and somewhere around the UK or something like that. But I don't think there was ever a US pressing of it. So would love to get my hands on that. Fantastic songs too. I mean, Kiss from a Rose is definitely the most well-known song because it was so played out with Batman and everything, which is kind of one of my least favorite songs on the album. But stuff like Bring It On, Dreaming in Metaphors, Don't Cry, Prayer for the Dying, I mean, just awesome tracks. And I really been wanting to get one of these. And you can get a copy, $150, $125, something like that. Which if I sold some stuff and saved up my PayPal, I'd be more than happy to do it. But even then, like finding a near mint copy or even an excellent copy of it, it's just been extremely hard to do. So I would love a reissue of that. Melissa Etheridge, Yes I Am. As I mentioned in just a recent video, they so need to get her stuff reissued, and this would be a great start. And again, you could find these original pressings, $150, $200, that type of thing. But just give me a very nice $27.99 pressing. But fantastic album. Megadeth, Euthanasia. I'm sure all you Megadeth fans out there, this is one that you're kind of craving too. So it'd be awesome if they reissued this, which I guess technically they did, but they decided to do it on a picture disc of all things. It's like, oh my gosh. But yeah, could definitely use that. And even staying on the Megadeth topic, even though I have an original pressing of this, it's in really good condition, a South Korean pressing. This is just one that all Megadeth fans need to have. So I'm gonna vote for this reissue mainly for other Megadeth fans and not for myself. Although I will pick a copy up if they reissue it. But yeah, you know, they're South Korean pressings. They did do a MoFi of it, which was pretty cool. But of course, that's hard as heck to get and blah blah blah. This is one they should also redo. I've seen this one on vinyl before, but I've never owned it. Depeche Mode, the singles, 86 through 98. Just a greatest hits for Depeche Mode. And yeah, I mean, just press it on a nice heavyweight vinyl, nice thick gatefold. You know, go ahead and charge me $40+ for it or whatever. It would be totally worth it to me. I usually don't say that about a lot, but you know. And I would also say Hurricane by Grace Jones, the last album I need for my Grace Jones vinyl collection. And then I also want to throw Cross Purposes by Black Sabbath. This is the only Black Sabbath album that I'm missing from my collection. I have all their other studio albums, so if I could get a nice official pressing of Cross Purposes, that would be awesome. Which I think they just, not too long ago, did an official pressing of like Cross Purposes live. I believe it was official, but it's like, live? Like, just give us the studio album. Holy cow. So yeah, and last but not least on that, Ozzy. You know, pretty much everything after No More Tears. I mean, and that, I guess that's a reissue because they did the box set, which means those albums have been pressed recently. So yeah, just go ahead and give us reissues of all the albums after No More Tears. If we talk about albums that have not been pressed on vinyl, at least I don't think the first one has, Fuel, Something Like Human, I wouldn't mind having that on vinyl. And I would give up having everything that I want reissued if they would give me Godsmack, Awake, Faceless, and 4. If I could get those 4 out, or those 3 albums on vinyl next year, I wouldn't need a reissue of another single thing of anything. So that's my wish list to the universe, so to speak. So Miss Lady Soul, as always, thanks for watching and thanks for the question. Next we're gonna go see Chance Hollingsworth. What's up, man? Great to hear from you. I'm glad you jumped on board. And he says, always cool running into you at the shop and at record shows. Leads to my question. Speaking of the St. Louis record show, what are your thoughts on early bird entry versus normal 10 a.m. start time? Specifically, do you worry about missing out on records by not going to the early bird route? Yeah, there's a pretty nice show that they have 5 times a year here in St. Louis, and the doors officially open at 8 o'clock, and it costs $5 to get into 8 o'clock. That's called the early bird. After 10 o'clock, it's only $3 to get in. So I don't go to the early bird. Matter of fact, most of the time, I usually get there right around 10:30 is about my magic time. Because I did the early bird thing a number of times, and what I kind of discovered was, like, most of the vendors aren't even really set up. They don't have all the vendors don't have all their stuff out, and so it's just kind of like, you know, it seemed like a waste of time the number of times I did it in the past, and I did do it a number of times. It just seems like that 10 o'clock, 10:30 is just late enough on a Sunday where you go in, there's tons of people, all the vendors are up and rolling, and like the energy of it is all still there, and that just always seems to be the magic time for me. And when I go to most record shows, it's like I don't really expect to find a bunch of stuff that I want in the first place, which is nice because I've gotten very comfortable with walking out without a lot of or anything at all. But then I also just kind of figure, like, with the stuff I'm looking for and the condition that I demand that it's in and all these type of things, I just kind of assume in a lot of cases, again, there's a lot of collectors that like OG pressings and nice stuff and, you know, are collectors. But I also just kind of feel a lot of times too that a lot of people in there are just kind of, you know, they're buying stuff that maybe I wouldn't buy or wouldn't be interested in based on a number of different factors, whether it's stuff I already have or condition and all that type of thing. So maybe a number of the things that I would actually want will still be there at 10:30, 11 o'clock, or whatever the case may be, because only a certain number of people might want to actually purchase those things, And if someone takes a few things that I wanted, great, because I probably would spend more money than I should, and that just helps that situation. So yeah. And the second part of that question, I'm sorry, were there other record shows that I had been to, and if so, did I have like a favorite one? Haven't really been to a lot of other record shows. Like, I've traveled and gone to record stores all over the country, like coast to coast. So I go to stores, like literally I travel out of state to go to stores and stuff all the time, but never really done it for record shows. A couple I used to go to in Kansas City years ago would be the only ones I could really say that I've even kind of done. But at some point in time, the Chicago show, the Austin show, definitely want to kind of make it out and have a chance to experience that. So yeah, thanks for the question, man. Let's see. Oh, at the 15-minute mark. So let's just do one more question. Let's see. We'll go to Joe Slam. I'll ask two questions. What are your thoughts about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Not the museum, but the organization, as in like who gets in, who doesn't, kind of thing. And what do you use to shave your head, and how often do you shave it? I use disposable razors, and I typically shave, if I keep everything bald, every 4 days or so. Every 4, maybe 5 days at the most. Matter of fact, I'm probably on about a 5-dayer right now. But I completely shave. I'm not going bald anywhere. Matter of fact, my hair grows extremely fast. So I use about every 5 days to keep it bald. And yeah, just the good old-fashioned disposable razors. As far as what I think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the organization and who gets in and who doesn't kind of thing, I mean, I do think it's kind of, there's a lot of BS in there. It's kind of crap, so to speak. But I'm also not saying it's kind of crap because I'm bashing anyone. And let me explain what I mean by that. Like, I don't think that the people who are making the decisions, I'm always assume starting from a position that these are not evil people. Like, these are not people that are trying to do the wrong thing or trying to be mean, or so just take it off the table and just say these are people that want to do the right thing. Okay, so let's assume that. Then my question becomes, well, how do I explain the decisions and things that they're doing when you see some of the bands that are left out? So, and a lot of times that ends up revolving around metal and hard rock that don't get a lot of the accolades or the respect and things of that nature. So I honestly think what's happening, and this is just kind of a theory that I'm just pulling based off of what I'm seeing happening with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and bands and stuff like that. So total theory, I don't have any proof for whatsoever. I just kind of feel it. I think what's happening is you have these people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and like most things, when you get on the board or you get to the whatever, you're the decision maker. You're there because you know. You're there because you've experienced. You're there because you have the knowledge. Like, you're here and everybody else is here. Even if you're not trying to be mean or anything else, it's just something that kind of comes in human nature, right? So when you're here in a music standpoint, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, then what ends up happening, I think, is this underlying ego really starts to take over, and you don't even know that it's taking over in the way that it has. So if these people are people that don't get metal, they don't get hard rock. It's just like they're not going home and throwing Maiden and Judas Priest and Testament and all this type of stuff on their Overkill. That's not going on their turntable. So it's not their thing, which is fine, right? But now you've created this situation where if we are the music gods and we don't think these bands are good or worthy or skillful or whatever else, what would it mean if we had to bring one of them in? Because now, in essence, what they've done is they've told themselves, we don't know everything about music that we think we do. We're not the overlords of all music because this is something that we think is crap, but everyone else has gotten to the point where they've made us bring it in. And I really think like that's what would be going on with them if all of a sudden Maidens and Priests and all of these type of bands were making their way into the Hall of Fame. It's like, oh my gosh, bands that I think are not very good and not very crap and blah blah. Like, why are they coming into the Hall of Fame and I don't think they're worthy to be here? I'm no longer the king with all the knowledge and all the decisions. So unless it's my Beatles, unless it's my Monkees, unless it's my, the bands that I have so much respect for and everything else, I can't let these other bands in. And I really do think on some deep level, that's kind of what's happening. And there's two things that initially made me really start thinking about that. And I'll try to wrap up here because we're getting the 20-minute mark. When I first started kind of thinking that way, when I was at the Hall of Fame one time, and there was a guy that worked there, been working there for almost 12 years or something like that, and he was talking to us. And a guy asked, like, how come some of these type of bands aren't in the Hall of Fame? And he was like, well, people always like to think about the bands they like or the bands that are kind of well known and that type of thing. But really what the Hall of Fame is about bands that have influenced rock and roll and that's had, impacts on the overall history and growth and changing of rock and roll. And I was like, well, then how does that, and like literally said this, like, well, then how does that explain how Deep Purple and Kiss are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which they weren't at the time? I was like, that definition, like, what band fits that even more? So it's like, okay, that's a BS definition because, okay, so anyway, so that moment. Now, when I was there more recently, there was a new thing they had set up where you could type in the name of, I think, 3 bands or artists. And it's just like, just randomly, there's no list or anything. You type in the names, and then when you hit enter, it pulls up the screen to show you, out of everyone that's put names into this thing, these have been the top 10 that got names that got typed in. Number 1 was Iron Maiden, and number 2 at the time was Stevie Nicks. So again, it's just one of those things where, okay, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you have this world-renowned band called Iron Maiden that's been around for decades, that hops on a 757 and flies from country to country and continent to continent and packs in wild, rabid, devoted fans for years and years and years. And almost any heavy metal band you talk to, they will reference Iron Maiden in some level as being an influence to them. You can't find a place for them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Fans are telling you this. Random people from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, not talking to each other, come into your place and they all tell you Iron Maiden is the band that deserves to be here. But you can't even find a way to give them any serious consideration. That to me just says, I don't get Iron Maiden, therefore I can't let them in, because if I do, what does that say about me and what I lack in understanding of music? And that kind of in a nutshell is what I think is going on the surface with the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing. Matter of fact, I think even to a certain degree, and you can say I'm wrong or whatever else, I think only recently the fact that your LL Cool J's and hip hop artists and everything are starting to get in the door is because that woke piece that's kind of, it's been infesting so many different things in society. I think it's kind of one of those, oh yeah, well, we can go with hip hop and we can go with, and I'm totally fine with that. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't mean rock and roll to me. It means secular music. So NWA should be in there. LL Cool J, who got nominated this year, he should be in there without question. And yeah, I don't like people saying like it's not rock and roll and that type of thing, because quite frankly, I would say go watch LL Cool J's induction performance from this past year. That freaking set was as rock and roll as any rock and roll band that's been on that stage. So no problem with them being in. But I think they had a special little door that actually allowed hip hop to start getting its recognition. And we just need to find a way for metal and hard rock to really start getting its recognition as well. So that's my 2 cents on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Sorry, I kind of rambled way over, but good question. Enjoyed that one. So as always, VC, let me know what you think, and we will talk to you soon. All right, take care, guys.